she accidentally saw the Duke bathing. Now he demands to see her too. Chloe froze. She'd walked into the wrong room and seen the scarred, naked Marquis. She expected to be fired instantly. Instead, he locked the door and issued a terrifying ultimatum. You saw me vulnerable. Now, I demand the same from you. But his request wasn't physical. It was far more dangerous. Subscribe right now to hear the full story of accidental intimacy. Chloe Hart knew the rules of survival better than she knew the back of her own hand. Rule number 1. Be invisible. Rule number 2. Anticipate needs before they are spoken. Rule number 3. Never, ever make a mistake. At 26 years old, Chloe was an expert at all three. As the paid companion to the wealthy widow Mrs. Blake, Chloe was not quite a servant, but certainly not family. She was something in between, like a piece of furniture that could talk, but only when spoken to. She wore gray dresses that blended into the walls. She walked softly so her shoes didn't click on the floorboards, and she kept her opinions locked tight inside a small box in her chest. It was a Tuesday morning when Chloe's carefully constructed life crashed down around her. It started with Mrs. Blake's theatrical gasp at the breakfast table. The older woman clutched her chest, her diamond rings flashing in the morning light. "Oh, my heart. The palpitations are back, Chloe. I feel faint." It was a performance, of course. Mrs. Blake wasn't actually fainting. She just wanted attention because the tea was slightly cold. But Chloe jumped into action immediately. "I'll get your smelling salts, ma'am," Chloe said, pushing back her chair. "Sit still. Breathe." "The blue sitting room," Mrs. Blake wailed. "I left them in the cabinet in the blue sitting room." Chloe picked up her skirts and ran. She hurried up the servants' stairs, her heart beating fast. She needed to be quick. If she was too slow, Mrs. Blake would turn sour for the rest of the day. Chloe reached the second-floor landing. She saw Mary, the junior housemaid, dusting a vase. "Is the blue room empty, Mary?" Chloe asked, breathlessly. Mary nodded, looking bored. "Yes, miss. Just finished cleaning it myself." "No one's in there." "Thank you." Chloe rushed down the hallway. She reached the door to the blue sitting room. She didn't knock. Why would she? Mary said it was empty. And Mrs. Blake was downstairs wailing. Chloe turned the brass handle and shoved the door open with force. But it wasn't the sitting room. In her panic, in her rush, Chloe had turned one door too early. She had opened the door to the adjoining guest bathroom. Time seemed to freeze. It was like the world stopped spinning for exactly 3 horrifying seconds. Second one. Chloe realized the room was full of steam. It smelled of expensive soap and hot water. In the center of the room stood a large copper bathtub. Standing in that tub, rising from the water like a titan, was a man. Second two. The man turned. Water streamed down his broad back. His dark hair was plastered to his neck. Chloe's eyes, wide with shock, took in everything. Before she could stop herself, she saw the muscles of his back. But she also saw something else: thick, jagged white lines crisscrossing his skin. Scars. Terrible, old scars that looked like lightning strikes across his shoulders. Second three. The man whipped his head around. Shock flashed across his face. It was Julian Carlyle, the Marquis of Evely. He was Mrs. Blake's distinguished lodger, a war hero who rarely spoke and never smiled. And he was naked. Their eyes met. His were dark and furious. Hers were terrified. "Who?" he started to shout. Chloe slammed the door. She slammed it so hard the walls shook. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet hallway. Her face felt like it had been set on fire. Heat rushed from her toes to her hairline. She didn't wait. She turned and ran. She fled down the corridor, her skirts tangling around her ankles. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Of all the people in London, she thought wildly, I had to walk in on a duke. A scarred, angry, powerful duke. She nearly collided with Thomas, the footman, at the end of the hall. "Miss Hart?" Thomas asked, steadying her. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I. Chloe couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. From behind her, down the hall, a deep, angry voice roared through the wood of the bathroom door. Who was that? Damn it! Who was in here? Thomas's eyes went wide. Mary, the maid, popped her head out of a room. They both looked at Chloe's crimson-red face. They both heard the Marquis shouting. In that instant, Chloe knew the truth. The gossip was already born. She somehow managed to fetch the smelling salts from the correct room and bring them downstairs. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the bottle. Mrs. Blake took one look at Chloe's face and sat up straight, her fake heart attack forgotten. What happened? Mrs. Blake demanded. Her eyes narrowed. You look guilty. I walked into the wrong room, Chloe whispered. His lordship was indisposed. Indisposed how? Mrs. Blake pressed. Bathing, Chloe squeaked. The color drained from Mrs. Blake's face. She didn't look shocked. She looked calculating. Did anyone see you leave his door? Thomas and Mary were in the hall, Chloe admitted, looking at the floor. Mrs. Blake groaned and rubbed her temples. Chloe, you foolish girl. Your reputation is the only thing you own. You have no money. You have no family name. You only have your good character. If people think you are loose, I cannot keep you here. No decent house will hire you. It was an accident. Chloe pleaded. Mary said the room was empty. The truth doesn't matter, Mrs. Blake said coldly. Only the story matters. And servants love a scandalous story. Chloe spent the rest of the day in a state of terror. She hid in the linen closet folding sheets just to avoid being seen. She felt sick to her stomach. She kept seeing the image of him, the water, the shock, the scars. She had seen his secrets. Everyone knew the Marquis had been injured in the war, but he was fiercely private. He wore high collars and long sleeves. No one saw the damage, until her. That night, she lay in her small attic bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep. She waited for the summons. She knew he would demand she be fired. She pictured herself on the streets of London, carrying her one suitcase, with nowhere to go. A knock came at her door. Chloe jumped, clutching her blanket. It was Thomas. He looked uncomfortable. Miss Hart, he said softly. His lordship requests to see you. Chloe's stomach dropped through the floor. Now? In the morning, Thomas said. 8 a.m. sharp. In his private sitting room. Did he say why? No, miss. Just that it was important. Thomas left, and Chloe was alone in the dark. This was it. The execution. He was going to yell at her, threaten her, or demand she leave the house immediately. She curled into a ball, wishing she could disappear. But she couldn't. She had to face him. The next morning, Chloe dressed in her plainest gray dress. She pulled her hair back so tightly it hurt. She wanted to look severe. She wanted to look like a professional, not a woman who barged into bathrooms. She arrived at the Marquis' sitting room at 7:59 a.m. She knocked. Enter. A deep voice called. Chloe walked in. The room was beautiful, filled with morning light. Books lined the walls, from floor to ceiling. Near the large window stood a heavy oak desk, covered in papers and charcoal pencils. Julian Carlyle, the Marquis of Evely, stood by the window. He was dressed perfectly, in a black coat and a crisp white cravat. He looked every inch the powerful aristocrat. But Chloe noticed his hands were gripping the back of his chair, his knuckles white. He turned to face her. His expression was hard to read. It wasn't quite anger, but it was intense. Miss Hart, he said. Thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice, my lord, Chloe said. Her voice shook, but she stood tall with her chin up. If she was going down, she would go down with dignity. No, he admitted. I suppose not. He gestured to a wooden chair in the center of the room. Sit, please. Chloe sat on the edge of the chair, her back rigid. I want to apologize again, she started quickly. It was a terrible mistake. The maid told me the room was empty. I would never intentionally. I know, Julian interrupted. He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking frustrated. I spoke to Mrs. Blake. I told her the fault was mine. I left the door unlocked. Chloe blinked. She hadn't expected that. You defended me? I told the truth, he said stiffly. However, that does not change the facts. Yesterday, Miss Hart, you saw me. Chloe blushed, looking away. Yes. You saw me in a state of total vulnerability. Julian continued. His voice dropped lower, becoming rougher. You saw the damage, the scars. I do not let people see that. Not ever. I'm sorry, Chloe whispered. Apologies do not erase the image, he said. He walked around the desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. This creates an imbalance. You have seen me without my armor. You have seen my weakness, and I find I cannot tolerate that imbalance. Chloe's blood turned to ice. She gripped her skirts. What are you saying? Julian looked her straight in the eye. You saw me, Miss Hart. Now, I demand to see you too. For a second, the air left the room. Chloe shot to her feet, knocking the chair back. Fury mixed with fear in her chest. If you think, she stammered, her voice rising, that because I am a paid companion, I will undress for you. If you think you can take advantage of me. Julian's eyes widened in horror. He stepped back, holding up his hands. Good God. No. Then what are you demanding? Chloe cried out. Tears stung her eyes. Because it sounds like you want to humiliate me. No, please, sit down. Julian looked mortified. I phrased that terribly. Please. Chloe didn't sit. She stood near the door, ready to bolt. Julian took a deep breath. He picked up a stick of charcoal from his desk. I am an artist, Miss Hart, or I was, before the war. Drawing it is how I manage things, how I process the world. He looked at the charcoal in his hand, then back at her. When I said I want to see you, I didn't mean your body. I meant you. The person you hide behind that gray dress and those perfect manners. You are a ghost in this house. Chloe Hart. You glide around, invisible, polite, saying only what people want to hear. I want to see who you actually are. Chloe stared at him, confused. I don't understand. I want to draw you, Julian said plainly. I want you to sit for me. Every morning. Fully clothed. The door will be unlocked. We will sit, and I will sketch, and we will talk. Real conversation. No, yes, my lord. No. You want to draw me? I want to even the ledger, Julian said. You saw me without my defenses. Allow me to see you without yours. Let me see the real Chloe Hart. It was the strangest thing anyone had ever said to her. A marquis wanted to know her? And if I refuse? Chloe asked. Julian's face hardened slightly. I cannot force you, but I am offering you a deal. If you agree to these sessions, and if you agree to never speak of my scars to a soul, I will ensure Mrs. Blake raises your salary. I will ensure your reputation is protected. You will be safe. You're bribing me, Chloe said. I am compensating you for your time, he corrected, and buying your silence about my injuries. Chloe looked at him. She saw the arrogance of a rich man, yes. But she also saw something else in his eyes. Fear. He was terrified that she would tell people about his scars. He was terrified of being looked at with pity. He was trying to control the situation the only way he knew how. She thought about her savings. She thought about how badly she needed new shoes. I have conditions, Chloe said bravely. Julian looked surprised. Go on. The door stays open, she said, counting on her fingers. We meet in this room, never a bedroom. And you cannot make me wear uncomfortable costumes. And, if you ever speak to me like a servant during our sessions, I walk out. A tiny, almost invisible smile touched Julian's lips. Agreed. Then I accept, Chloe said. Good, Julian said. He opened his sketchbook. Tomorrow morning. Same time. And Miss Hart? Don't wear gray. The first few sessions were agonizing. Chloe sat in the wooden chair by the window, stiff as a board. She felt like a specimen in a jar. Julian sat across from her, his charcoal scratching rhythmically against the paper. The sound scritch, scratch, scritch was the only noise in the room. You're holding your breath, Julian said after 10 minutes. I am breathing, Chloe lied. You are performing breathing. There is a difference. He looked up, his dark eyes critical. Relax your shoulders. You look like you are waiting for a cannon to fire. I am sitting in a room with the Marquis who shouted at me yesterday. Chloe snapped. Forgive me. If I'm not relaxed. Julian paused. Then, he nodded. Fair enough. That was the first crack in the wall. Over the next 2 weeks, a routine formed. Chloe would arrive at 8 a.m. Julian would have coffee waiting for her. He had learned she liked it with plenty of milk and no sugar. At first, they only talked about safe things. The weather, the books on his shelf. But Julian kept pushing. He kept digging. What do you think of Mrs. Blake? He asked one Tuesday. She is a very generous employer, Chloe recited automatically. Julian stopped drawing. He gave her a look. The truth, Chloe. Remember the deal. Chloe sighed. She looked at the door to make sure it was open. I think she is lonely. And I think she faints because she likes the drama. But she isn't cruel. Just self-absorbed. Julian chuckled. It was a rusty, low sound. Accurate. And Lord Peterson? The man who visited yesterday? A pompous windbag, Chloe blurted out before she could stop herself. Julian threw his head back and laughed. It was a real, genuine laugh that transformed his face. The moody, scary Marquis vanished, replaced by a handsome man with laugh lines around his eyes. I knew it, Julian said, grinning. I saw you rolling your eyes when he was talking about his hunting dogs. I did not roll my eyes. Chloe protested, though she was smiling too. I merely adjusted my gaze. You are a terrible liar, Miss Hart. As the days turned into weeks, the sessions became the best part of Chloe's day. It was the only time she didn't have to be a servant. She could just be a person. She learned things about him, too. She learned that he drew with his left hand because his right arm, the injured one, was still stiff in the mornings. She learned that he hated crowded ballrooms because the noise reminded him of the battlefield. One rainy morning, while posing, Chloe asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Does it hurt? She asked softly. The arm? Julian's hand froze on the page. He didn't look up. Sometimes. When it rains. Is that why you hide it? He looked up then, his expression vulnerable. I hide it because I do not want pity. Before the war, I was the Golden Duke. Perfect, strong, untouched. Now, he gestured to his shoulder. You aren't broken, Chloe said firmly. You survived. That makes you stronger than the men who never left their drawing rooms. Julian looked at her for a long, silent moment. The intensity of his gaze made Chloe's heart flutter. He wasn't looking at her like a sketch subject anymore. He was looking at her. Hold that expression, he whispered. He began to draw furiously. What expression? The one where you look at me like I'm a human being, not a title. By the 6th week, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. It wasn't just friendly. It was electric. When Julian handed her a cup of coffee, his fingers would brush against hers, and sparks would shoot up Chloe's arm. When she caught him looking at her, he wouldn't look away immediately. One morning, he showed her the sketch he had finished. Chloe stared at the paper. It wasn't a stiff portrait of a lady. It was a drawing of a woman laughing. Her head was thrown back, her eyes crinkled with joy, a stray curl falling over her forehead. It was beautiful. It was messy. It was alive. Is that how you see me? Chloe asked, her voice quiet. That is who you are, Julian said softly. When you forget to be invisible. He stepped closer to her. They were standing mere inches apart. The smell of charcoal and sandalwood surrounded him. Chloe looked up at him, her breath hitching. She knew, in that moment, that this was dangerous. She was falling in love with a duke. And he might be falling for her too. But fairy tales didn't happen to girls like Chloe. Happiness in a grand house is like a soap bubble. Beautiful, fragile, and easily popped by a sharp word. The rumors started in the kitchen. Then they moved to the drawing room. Finally, they reached the ears of the rest of London. Have you heard? The Marquis and the companion, locked in his study every morning, for hours. They say she walks in without knocking. They say she is his mistress. Chloe tried to ignore the whispers. She tried to keep her head down. But the bubble burst on a Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Blake summoned Chloe to the parlor. The widow was holding a newspaper, a scandal sheet. Her face was pale. "Read this," Mrs. Blake said, thrusting the paper at Chloe. Chloe read the blind item circled in red ink. Which scarred war hero has been taking private art lessons from a certain gray mouse of a companion? One wonders what exactly is being studied behind those closed doors. Chloe felt the blood drain from her face. "Mrs. Blake, this is not true. We just talk." He draws. "The door is always open." "It doesn't matter," Mrs. Blake snapped. "Lady Thornbury just cancelled her visit because she doesn't want to be associated with this house." "You are ruining me." "Chloe, I didn't mean to." Mrs. Blake looked sad, but resolved. "I cannot keep you. I have written you a reference. You have 2 days to pack. I have found a position for you in Yorkshire. It is a governess job for a family in the country, far away from London." "Yorkshire?" Chloe gasped. "It is a fresh start," Mrs. Blake said. "Go pack." Chloe fled the room, blinding tears streaming down her face. She didn't go to her room. She went straight to Julian's study. She didn't knock. She threw the door open. Julian looked up from his desk, startled. "Chloe, what's wrong?" "You said you would protect me," Chloe cried, throwing the newspaper onto his desk. "You said, if I did this, I would be safe." Julian picked up the paper. He read it, his jaw tightening. "I will sue them. I will speak to the editor." "It's too late," Chloe sobbed. "Mrs. Blake has dismissed me. I'm being sent to Yorkshire in 2 days. I'm losing everything." Julian stood up. He looked pale. "Dismissed? No. I won't allow it. You don't control her." "Then..." Julian paced around the desk. He looked frantic. "Then, there is a solution. A practical one." He stopped in front of her. "Marry me." The room went silent. "What?" Chloe whispered. "Marry me," Julian repeated. He sounded like a general planning a battle. "If we marry, the gossip stops. You become a marchioness. No one can touch you. You will have a home, security, money. It solves everything." Chloe stared at him. Her heart, which had been breaking, now shattered completely. "It solves everything?" she repeated slowly. "Is that what I am to you? A problem to be solved?" "No, You are proposing marriage like it is a business transaction," Chloe said, her voice trembling with anger. "You are trying to buy your way out of guilt. You feel bad that your art project ruined my life, so now you want to pay for it with a ring." "I am trying to save you," Julian shouted. "I don't want to be saved by your pity," Chloe shouted back. I thought. She wiped her tears angrily. "I thought you actually saw me. But you don't. You just see a mess you made." "Chloe, please." "No." She backed away toward the door. "I won't be your guilt offering. I would rather be a governess in Yorkshire than a wife you married out of duty. I didn't mean it like that. Goodbye, my lord," she said. She turned and ran out. This time, she didn't look back. Julian stood alone in his study. He looked at the sketches of Chloe spread out on his desk. Chloe, laughing. Chloe, thinking. Chloe, challenging him. He sank into his chair and put his head in his hands. He realized, with a sickening thud in his stomach, that he was a coward. He had offered her marriage as a shield, because he was too afraid to offer her what she really wanted. His heart. He didn't just want to save her reputation. He wanted her. But he had been too scared to say the words, "I love you." So he had said, "Marry me to fix this," instead. And because of his fear, he had lost her. The next day was Mrs. Blake's annual charity tea party. It was the worst possible timing. The house was full of the very people who were whispering about Chloe. Chloe had to serve. It was her final duty before leaving for Yorkshire. She moved through the crowded drawing room with a tray of tea, feeling the eyes of the guests burning into her back. She heard the giggles. She saw the pointed looks. She felt like she was walking to the gallows. She just wanted it to be over. Suddenly, the room went quiet. Julian had entered. Usually, the Marquis avoided these parties. But today, he walked right into the center of the room. He looked impressive, terrifying, and determined. He walked straight over to where Mrs. Blake was sitting. "My lord," Mrs. Blake said, surprised. "We didn't expect you." "I need a moment," Julian said. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "I need to address a rumor." Chloe froze near the curtains. She wanted to die. "Please," she thought, "don't make it worse." Julian turned to face the room. He scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on Chloe. He held her gaze. "There has been talk," Julian said clearly, "regarding myself and Miss Hart." The room was deadly silent. "Several weeks ago," Julian continued, "Miss Hart accidentally entered a room where I was bathing. It was an honest mistake caused by a servant's error. The fault was entirely mine for leaving the door unlocked." A gasp rippled through the crowd. "A duke admitting fault?" I responded. "Poorly," Julian said. He took a deep breath. "I was angry and embarrassed. As many of you know, I carry injuries from the war. I have spent years hiding them, ashamed of how I look. My vanity turned an accident into a scandal." Chloe's hands shook. He was telling them. He was telling everyone about his insecurity. "I subsequently asked Miss Hart to sit for me as a model for my sketches," Julian went on. "I thought it was a fair exchange. But I failed to realize that by keeping her in my company, I was putting her reputation at risk. I acted with selfish disregard for her honor because I was too focused on my own comfort." He took a step toward Chloe. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. "Miss Hart has been nothing but honorable," Julian said, his voice ringing with emotion. "She is intelligent, kind, and entirely innocent of any impropriety. If I have developed feelings in this matter, and I have, they are mine alone." He stopped in front of Chloe. He looked at her, stripping away all his defenses. He ignored the 50 people watching. "I tried to fix this yesterday with a practical proposal," Julian said to her, his voice softening. "I was a coward. I treated you like a problem to be solved because I was too afraid to admit the truth." "Julian," Chloe whispered. "The truth," he said, "is that I don't want to marry you to stop the gossip. I don't want to marry you to save your reputation." He got down on one knee. The entire room inhaled sharply. A marquise, kneeling for a paid companion. "I want to marry you," Julian said, looking up at her, "because you are the only person who has ever seen me scars and all and didn't look away. I want to marry you because you make me laugh. Because you challenge me. Because I am in love with you, Chloe Hart." Tears spilled over Chloe's cheeks. This wasn't a business deal. This wasn't a bribe. This was the man she loved, laying his heart out on the carpet for everyone to see. He was making himself vulnerable to protect her. "You're making a scene," Chloe said through her tears, a smile breaking through. "I don't care," Julian said. "Let them look. I only see you." He reached for her hand. "Will you marry me? Not for the scandal, but for us?" Chloe looked at Mrs. Blake, who looked shocked but misty-eyed. She looked at the guests, who were stunned into silence. Then she looked at Julian, the man who drew her laughing, the man who liked his coffee strong, the man who needed her just as much as she needed him. "Yes," Chloe whispered. Then louder, "Yes, I will." Julian stood up and pulled her into his arms. He didn't care about the audience. He kissed her a deep, desperate kiss that sealed their promise. For the first time in her life, Chloe Hart wasn't invisible. She was the center of the world. Epilogue. 3 months later. The morning sun streamed into the sitting room of the Evely estate. Chloe sat at the large oak desk, reviewing the ledgers for the estate's tenant farms. She scratched a note in the margin. "You are frowning," a voice said. Chloe looked up. Julian was sitting in his chair by the window, a sketchbook in his lap. He looked relaxed, his shirt collar open, showing the edge of the silver scars on his neck. He didn't hide them in his own home anymore. "I am not frowning," Chloe said. "I am concentrating. The grain prices are up." "You look beautiful when you concentrate," Julian said. "And you look distracted," Chloe teased. "Are you going to draw me, or just stare at me?" "I can do both," he smiled. Chloe stood up and walked over to him. She sat on the arm of his chair. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. It felt safe. It felt like home. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly, running a hand through his hair. "The scandal? The whispering?" "The whispering stopped the moment we were married," Julian said. "And even if it hadn't, I don't care." He kissed her hand. "I lived in the dark for a long time. Chloe, you turned on the light. Why would I ever regret that?" Chloe smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. She looked at the sketch on his lap. It was a drawing of two people sitting together, looking at each other with total honesty. "Draw me again," she whispered. "Always," he promised. And he did.